Okay, in this video, we're going to solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. First thing that we have to do, we have to make sure that the equation is set up to use the quadratic formula, which means that the equation has to be set equal to 0. So I get all my variables, constant, everything on one side of the equation. Then I'm going to identify my A, my B, and my C. So I'm going to see my A is in front of my squared term, my B is in front of my X term, and then my C is my constant. So we're going to identify what those three terms are, and then we'll plug directly into our formula. So looking at the formula, remember that it is opposite of B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C. All of that is divided by 2 times A. So let's look at an example real quick. So let's say, for example, that we have the equation 3x squared minus 7x equals negative 2. The first thing that we want to do is we want to set this equation equal to 0. So I need to move this 2 to the other side. So my real equation will be 3x squared minus 7x plus 2 equals 0. Once I'm at this point, then I can identify what is my A. Remember, it's the term in front of the squared. What is my B? The term in front of my X. And what is my C? Which is just the constant. Once I have these three things identified, then I'm going to go plug into my formula. So remember, using the formula up there, we have X equals the opposite of B. So I'm going to use positive 7. Plus or minus the square root of B squared, so negative 7 squared. Notice that I put that in parentheses because what I really want to do is I want to square the negative 7. If I don't use parentheses, sometimes, especially if I'm using a calculator, it will accidentally say 7 squared and then put a negative on it. That is not what I want to do. So I want to take the entire negative 7 and square it. Then I'm going to have minus 4 times my A, which is 3, times my C, which is 2. All of that gets divided by 2 times A, which is 3. So once I've got it plugged into my formula, I'm going to kind of work from the inside out. So I'm going to simplify what's underneath that what's underneath that square root. So I'm going to have 7 plus or minus the square root. Negative 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times 3 times 2 is going to be 24. All over 2 times 3, which is 6. I'm going to keep simplifying it. So 49 minus 24 is going to be 25. And some of you might be able to skip some of these steps. I'm just trying to show you each step so you can kind of follow along. So at this point, I see 7 plus or minus the square root of 25 over 6. Now, that square root is what I need to continue to simplify. We're going to have two options here. One, it's either going to be a perfect square, which is perfect. So then I'm going to go ahead and simplify them, separating them and finding two real solutions. Or it might still remain a square root. So we'll see one of those examples here in a minute. Conveniently, 25 is a perfect square. So really what I want to say is 7 plus 5 divided by 6. And I want to say 7 minus 5 divided by 6. That's going to give me my two solutions. Right? So 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 divided by 6. X is going to equal 2 here. 7 minus 5 is 2. 2 divided by 6. X is going to equal 1/3 here. So now I have my two solutions, x equaling 2 and x equaling 1/3. Okay, so let's try one more example here. We've got 2x squared equals 3x plus 4. Now remember, the first step is to make sure that it's set equal to 0 or it's not ready to use the quadratic formula yet. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and move that 3x over, and I want to move that 4 over. So I've got 2x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Now I can go ahead and identify my a, which is 2, my b, which is negative 3, and my c, which is negative 4. Once I've identified my a, b, and c, and I can go ahead and go to my quadratic formula. I'm going to take the opposite of b, which is going to now be a positive 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All of that's going to be over 2 times a. Remember, I'm going to start simplifying the inside of that square root first. So I'm going to have 3 plus or minus the square root. When I take negative 3 squared, I get 9. When I take negative 4 times 2 times negative 4, I get positive 32. All that's over 4. I'm going to keep simplifying here. So I'm going to have 3 plus or minus the square root of 41 over 4. Now, last time when we looked at this square root, it was perfect. But 41 is not perfect anymore. So at this point, sorry, this 41 is kind of weird looking here. Let me get that a little bit better. 41, there you go. Now, since this is not a perfect square, I cannot continue to reduce it. Okay, like the last one, I was able to reduce and take my 7 and add the 5 and divide by 6. Take the 7, subtract 5 and divide by 6. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write it as 3 plus the square root of 41 divided by 4. And 3 minus the square root of 41 divided by 4. Because that 41 can't be simplified, that's the best that I can do.